We want to welcome all of you. My name is Michael Maera, and I work with the East Africa Philanthropy Network, inviting Madam Susan, who will give us the introductory remarks to this webinar. Karibu, Madam.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching us from. My name is Susan Otieno, Executive Director, ActionAid Kenya. Just to start off by letting you know that ActionAid is turning 50 years this year since we started work in Kenya. And through our journey, we've come to appreciate partnerships. We started our work as direct implementation, where we would identify an area, go to the area and simply make the decision that this area needs a school, it needs a toilet, the school needs a toilet, or communities need water. And implementation, we realized that there were challenges. With implementation, we realized that there were challenges which would come up in terms of ownership, sustainability, and even ensuring that there's replication of the duty bearers. With time, we moved our mode of implementation to involve the communities. However, as we kept involving the communities, we simply brought them in to identify, and after identifying the specific intervention, we would again come in and have the project delivered and hand over and walk away. But with time again, as time went by, we again realized that there were pertinent stakeholders that we were leaving behind. One, we were not implementing these programs with our own resources, but there were resources that had been channeled to the organization through stakeholders, through supporters. We have individual givers, we have institutional organizations that give to ActionAid. We had corporates, we had foundations that gave to ActionAid. And so we felt that to build the ownership, we needed to pull in an approach that brought everyone on board. And that is how we started appreciating partnerships. Of course, as we progressed, I would call it, when we got to 35 years, we now realize that ideally what we are doing is not squarely an NGO or a CSO or a corporate's responsibility, but there is a duty bearer who's supposed to be delivering on this. And so we moved into community involvement. I would call it greater and meaningful involvement of communities, where we would go in together with the partner who is supporting us with the resources. We would sit with the communities, design the program, but in the process, we would also shift their focus on the rights, the duty bearers. Now, if I take water, for instance, the government commits to ensure that there is water in every village, running water actually from a tap. They commit to have schools at a close distance. They commit to have water sources that people would spend very little time to walk towards, and even health centers and hospitals. But then this is not the case in the entire country. So we started then engaging with the communities. First, to design what we call models. We would model with the community to demonstrate involvement, to demonstrate ownership, and also to bring in the element of sustainability. So we started the co-creation conversations. Yes, you need water, but how do you need it? What's range between the villages and the communities? And as they start enjoying the water, we would then go into a rights conversation with them and ask them, who should ideally provide water? Everybody in the community would actually give you the response that it is the government. And the moment they said so, we now realize that they know that the government has a responsibility. And we also started letting the communities know that what we do as non-profit organizations is to seek well-wishers, to seek partners, to seek stakeholders who equally have a responsibility, but ultimate responsibilities with the government. And so we were able to shift the communities to be able to know where to direct the asks, but most importantly, to see how to participate. So as we did the modeling, they learned that they need to participate way before the decision is made. How do they participate in the budgeting? And how do they make sure that they've put the community needs and priorities well packaged, develop their capability to speak for themselves and go and interact with the government? But also, how do they build in accountability? As they're interacting with the government, they're also building in accountability. And that accountability is what we've been able to do, I would say, a true understanding of accountability. That if you demand accountability from a government, they will demand that accountability from you. And the exercise that we do with them is to bring the stakeholders, to bring the corporates, for instance, who partner with us, take them to the community and let the community have a conversation with them. Then they've grown that culture of being able to account. So we are here today to have this conversation on partnerships between corporates and non-profit organizations. But what will be very interesting is to see how we are building the joint understanding, how we bring in the joint collaborations and other approaches that bring us into success. Maybe from where you're seated, when you hear corporate, you're thinking profit, but with profit without people can't be appreciated at the end of the day. And that is why, as non-profit organizations, we found it fit engaging with the corporates to be able to model to the communities, but ensure that the communities continue holding governments accountable, contributing in the decision-making, building in and participating in leadership, and equally becoming leaders. As we continue, we'll get to hear of some of the examples where we've had women, for instance, who couldn't speak before to express their interest, but because there was funding and they participated in the design, in the co-creation, their capacity was built, and they are now able to face the government. And most importantly, many of them have even gone into politics. If you look through the number of women, these just ended elections, the number has gone up. And we are proud as non-profit organizations, the kind of contribution that we've brought to ensure that we have the communities coming out to take leadership and participate in the decision making. So I welcome you all. And I look forward to an interactive session, and not forgetting that this is just foundation to the upcoming corporate event, which you'll get to learn more about it as we continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Madam Susan. That is quite apt in terms of how you've painted at least the journey of Action Aid over the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. Now, as we walk through this, we have a very able panel here. And I want to take this few minutes to welcome each one of them, to introduce themselves, and tell us a little bit about the organizations that they work with and work for as we set the pace for this discussion today. I want to begin with Henry. Karibu.
Manager with Safaricom and M-Pesa Foundations, and I head programs in the two foundations. Safaricom Foundation was established in the year 2003, and M-Pesa Foundation was established in the year 2010. Both foundations have one core purpose, which is transforming lives, which is also linked to the purpose of the business, that is Safaricom PLC. We focus on three key areas. The first is education, focusing on improving education outcomes from improving the learning spaces, content, use of technology to improve learning, improving the infrastructure. And then we also in health. And in health, we focus on maternal, newborn, and child health, especially in the high burden counties, because we know there are approximately 15 counties that contribute to 99% of the maternal mortality in this country. We also focus on non-communicable diseases, especially referrals and linkages to facilities, and also diabetes for children. And then we also focus on economic empowerment for young people. Kenya and Africa, we have the advantage of our young population, and we are taking advantage of that and looking at opportunities where we can really bring out the meaningful employment, meaningful income for young people in this country. Cross-cutting in all the three areas is the issue of water. And that's the reason we are here, and also having partnered with ActionAid for the last 12 years, reaching more than 300,000 Kenyans in this country. And then integrated what we call water, livelihood, and environmental conservation, which are critical because we know the impact of climate change, the impact of environmental changes to the livelihoods, to health, and other social well-being outcomes for this country. We are not experts in health, we are not experts in economic empowerment, and the other areas that we focus on as both foundations. However, we bring in our core competence, which is technology, as Safaricom, now to partner with now other organizations who have the core competencies around, work together and create that transformative long-term change to Kenyan communities. Because we know, as Susan has said, definitely profit cannot come before people. People have to come before profit. And as Safaricom, we say, when communities thrive, businesses thrive. And that's the essence of our existence as Safaricom and M-Pesa Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henry. That captures the essence of what non-profits are all about, that the development of persons and people and communities is our aim as non-profits. Grace, welcome.
Thank you.
KCDF is a big starter and a big trailblazer in this. Please tell us about yourself and KCDF.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you to ActionAid for this invitation. Susan, congratulations on turning 50. As the Kenya Community Development Foundation, I think we are your small sister or small brother. We turned 25 this year. And so we really, really do appreciate this platform. Speaking about communities, I feel I'm in really good, I'm in good company as Zilliant. We focus on ensuring that we help communities not only think about their sustainable development, but social justice as well. And so our values align very well with not only with Safaricom, but also with other partners on this panel, and especially with ActionAid. As KCDF, we work in 5 key strategic areas. We focus on livelihoods. We also focus on environmental conservation, education, giving communities voice and agency, as well as growing philanthropy in Kenya. We really look forward to having opportunities to speak more about the work that we do. But as a community foundation, what that simply means is that we are able to support communities at different levels. Kenyan communities were able to support those. KCDF, being a community foundation, at the center of it, of course, is partnerships. And therefore, this conversation today is very key to us. And again, we really appreciate the platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. And now, development in the larger sector has sound research that then directs the process of creating and growing communities and growing partnerships. I want to welcome Terry. Tell us about your organization and what you've done, and the community, the non-profits within the region, but also with the corporates, the general partnerships, strategic partnerships that then drive development. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you. Right. So my name's Terry Githinji. I'm working with an organization called FINGO as a Partnership and Innovations Advisor. Now, FINGO stands for Finnish NGOs. So it's an umbrella organization for all Finnish NGOs registered in Finland, but quite a number of them are working in East Africa, in Kenya and another like 9 countries in Africa. So what we do is we support the Finnish NGOs on advocacy issues in Finland, But most importantly, and why we are in East Africa, is supporting the Finnish NGOs here in East Africa in areas of innovation, technology solutions, and private sector collaboration. And I think just to congratulate ActionAid, first on attaining 50 years. I mean, that's a big feat. I'm sure, just looking around in the room, I don't know, our bodies could hide the ears, but, ActionAid could be older than 90% of us in this room. So congratulations. And I'm glad to be on this panel with organizations that have really made changes in this country. KCDF, I think, has led the conversation around incorporating communities at the grassroots. And you also really started the conversation around private sector collaboration, philanthropy in Kenya, and you've set the pace for the rest of us to follow. And just not to mention Safaricom Foundation. I mean, Safaricom is the one of the organizations that's leading in the corporate sector. And interestingly, also in the sector on working directly with communities through your various foundations and other CSR, activities. So I'm glad to be on this panel this morning, and just to say thank you for putting this together. I think it's at the right time that we're having this conversation. So back to what FINGO and what we do. So as I mentioned, we support member organizations to innovate, to incorporate technology solutions, and to also have or start and initiate and carry forward private sector collaboration. And you may wonder why the three? Why innovation? Why private sector? Why technology? And I would say private sector collaboration, or working in partnership between institutions, that is the government, NGOs, private sector, academia. FINGO, we also look at partnership between these organizations and academia. I think it's the next big thing. I think it's the next thing in terms of a hybrid model that's going to bring about sustainable development across the globe. Yeah, so I would actually say it's the next big innovation. And as we are seeing now, the world is interconnected in ways that we could never have imagined. And this has been facilitated by technology. And so that's why we support our member organizations to incorporate technology solutions as well in their innovations and in their work. And why I say this is, as you will see, people, processes, problems are also interlinked. What is affecting private sector, what is affecting communities, what's affecting academia, the problems are so interlinked. Look at what happened with COVID-19. It affected the entire continent. Look at what's happening now with the global economic crisis. It's affecting every other sector. Look at what's happening now with political instability and crisis in different other countries. It tends to boil over and affecting the entire globe. So there's a lot of interconnectedness of problems, and so we cannot ignore any longer the need to create this hybrid model where all institutions work together. And so one of the areas that we really capitalize on as FINGO is to do research that supports our work. And so recently, well, not recently, 2 years ago, we launched a study and employed 65 bees in the Kenyan economy for that 1 year. So again, you can see the potential for it. So the next slide sort of gives a background or an introduction to the private sector ecosystem. So now, two major segments focused more on the formal sector, mostly because the informal sector in Kenya is not well organized. It's quite a large sector, but it's not very well organized, so we focused on the formal sector. And then the private sector, the formal sector, private sector side has two different components. We have companies that are well established, they are running, and they are already making profits. But then there's another also very vibrant and big sector that is the startup ecosystem in Kenya. And I think Kenya is one of the countries that's really leading in terms of startups. And quite a number of them have been able to go into the market and start, making profits. And quite a number are still in the, in the startup stage and can plug in as NGOs if we want to partner with them. So the next, we want to look at the why. I mean, why then why do private sector NGOs want to partner? And the next slide gives a bit of detail on that. So you'll find that for private sector, the reason or the why they want to partner is to increase their market, their value chain, to be able to share their learnings, their resources, NGOs or with other corporations. They reduce the risk of, unlocking those new markets. For NGOs, the main reasons why NGOs partner is for sustainability and scalability. Of course, there's the other reason of finances. They want to increase their capacity. They want to increase their resources so that they're able to reach, bigger, to achieve their objectives more. But the main reason why NGOs partner, as was mentioned during the research, was for sustainability. The reason being companies stay longer, especially when they make profit, they stay longer. And once communities adopt the products, then they are able to continue, making the social changes even after the life of the NGOs has ended, once the projects are closed. And as we know, NGOs are struggling with budget cuts. There's a lot of peer competition. There's rising program costs. And, the ever-growing criticism over their inability to end extreme poverty. So to deal with this, NGOs are partnering with private sector players to bring in more resources and also to be able to scale their impact across the community. So the next slide continues to give us the why for partnerships. And the research was very wide, and we got quite a number of responses across. But here I just summarized, in a bit of detail, some of the things that came up from the field on the motivations for NGOs. As I mentioned earlier, especially of the startups, because they're always developing new things and coming up with new solutions. So when NGOs want to, innovate more and have extra resources for their work, then they look out for private sector players. The other one I would want to highlight from that, I'll not read through, but the one I want to highlight, NGOs sort of work through the social lens, but private sector is able to bring, the aspect of business, making business out of community needs, out of social problems. And once that is injected in communities, then the changes is lasting, it's sustainable. Now, for private sector players, the motivation mostly is NGOs are seen to understand the community needs more, and the interconnectedness of sitting on these grants. It's over 200 women who come together and they do chondos, and these chondos are marketed in baskets. In case someone listening in is not a Kenyan, so the baskets are marketed in Europe. And how this works is that there's a company that does the entire marketing. So they get the markets, they determine the quality, the sizes, the numbers, and they also work on the value chain. So how will they be transported? How do they ensure, all the logistics of getting to the European market? It's a private sector player who does this. Now then the NGO brings together the women groups. And interesting that the NGO works on sanitation. So their program is on sanitation and livelihoods. But they've been able to incorporate a private sector player who brings what I talked about, the entrepreneurial approach, into the work of the NGO. And what they are seeing over time is that even their water and sanitation program is slowly becoming like, a business in itself. So these women and their families are able to convert or to look at social needs from a business perspective. That's one of the things we've really seen from these projects. And a lot of learning also came up from this, and I hope we'll have time to interrogate that further. But this is just an example of one model. So different models have been used, and we can have a look at them in the next slide. But there's no sequence the CSR where corporates give money to a certain cause in an NGO. But then you get others where it's sort of financial, technical, and in-kind support. And I've given an example of the We Economy project of World Vision, where they've gone further than just giving funding, but they work together. They have sort of integrated their programming for the benefit of the NGO and the private sector players as well. We have strategic partnerships where you get organizations that share complementary skills and resources. So I've given an example of one of the corporates we interviewed, Arifu. So they develop digital education products. And in this case, I partnered with Heifer International to develop education materials on improved livestock keeping and poultry farming. And Heifer International were providing the content and providing a base for Arifu to develop their content for all of them. Because Arifu could sell their product outside Heifer International, but then Heifer were able to reach more people in the community at lower costs. So, it was scalable for both of them. Now the other one is systemic partnership. It's more longer term, and it looks at a broader community problem. And private sector player, NGO, then decide to go into that and tackle a specific problem in the community, bringing in their capacity and their resources together. There's a lot of detail that goes to each of these steps, the 4 steps you've outlined. But I just want to highlight that the very first initial step, very key, is internal alignment. So it's for the organization, private sector or NGO or academia to internally align the objectives so that then they can identify the specific problems that they want to partner with an NGO, because then each organization has a myriad of objectives, and I would imagine only a few can be addressed through partnership. So there's that need to identify which areas they want to partner in, and this area should be based on a specific need in the community and a specific need for the company. So for the company, maybe their need is they want to grow. Or maybe for the company, their need is they want to establish new markets in a region that NGO is working in. So it's important and imperative that every organization does internal reflection to identify what are the problems that they want to address through partnerships. Then the next one then would be to identify and select the right partner. So there's a whole partnership selection criteria that we came up with. I may not go into details at this point, but you could get it in the report. But it's more looking at, do your partners or those that you would want to partner with, are they in the geographical region that you want to cover? Do they have a good track record, So the objectives that you want to achieve through the partnership, does that partner have a good track record of achieving, those kind of objectives? And you also want to be able to look at their expertise in the proposed thematic area, right? So if you want to partner in the area of children, education, gender equality, livelihood support, so does the partner have the requisite technical skill and expertise in it? And of course, there are other things to look out in terms of compliance, legal compliance. Do they have the institutional capacity, to carry out the partnership in terms of technical resources, and, the support from management for the partnership to flourish. So it's important to look at all these things so that when you get to the partnership, you're not then shocked, halfway to realize that this partner doesn't actually have the money. They have the intention, but they don't have the money to finance their head off, or they don't have the technical capacity to support the partnership. So it's important to interrogate all these parameters before you get into the partnership. So once you've identified the partner and you've selected, the next phase would be to implement. Now they say, and the one thing that really came out from the research is The phase of implementation is where the success of a partnership is tested, you know. It could be all rosy and nice when you're identifying the partner, but when you get to implementation, that is where the real test is. And to make sure that they're successful, some of the things we picked out is there is need to co-design again. So as an organization, you have your objectives, you know what you want to achieve, but there's again need to co-design your joint objectives. You want to be sure that you have some joint parameters, joint objectives that you want to achieve, but you also want to make sure that the partnership is mutually beneficial. So different co-design mechanisms are used. Some used like the human-centered design thinking, where you look at, you know, bring different players and get to listen into the actual needs and, you know, design together. And many other participatory methods have been used to co-design, but again, it's very critical that you co-design your partnership. And the other thing I would want to highlight here is the need to document the protocols, document the partnership through an MOU. And each of the partners' roles should be very well articulated. What are they bringing into the partnership in terms of resources, in terms of capacity, and then also have very clear communication lines. Some of the partnerships didn't work out well because, well, there was minimal communication. So it's important that you have very clear communication lines. And again, at this point, it's also very important that you have already preset, you know, outcomes that are put in the partnership implementation framework. So every partner, private sector player, they already need to know what does success look like for us, you know. So if you're a private sector player, so say for example, Arifu want to have a product that they can be able to sell on improved livestock keeping. That for them is what success looks like, and they need to be very clear on that. While say for Heifer International, they want to be able to reach more farmers to have, you know, more impact and scale in terms of livestock or poultry keeping. So each partner needs to have very clear objectives of what they want to draw from the partnership. There will be other add-on, you know, results as a result of the partnership, but it's good to document the ones that must be achieved. So then, you know, implementation will take a while, but it's also important to do evaluation and access sustainability. So continuous monitoring. So different partners had different monitoring frameworks, but what is really, really important to monitor on a continuous basis is how the partnership is working. So check around communication, around management commitment from both sides, to continue allocating resources to the partnership, you know, monitor progress towards the successes, monitor progress towards the outcome, and then again also monitor issues of, you know, are you achieving, as an organization, are you achieving your outcome? You know, we interacted with some organizations that felt that their value has actually been drained from the partnership, right? Maybe because some of them went into a partnership with an organization that they felt was too good. You know, everything they wanted from that partnership, it just sounded attaining your value or attaining your objectives as a partner. Yeah, and so there are many things to check out for.